What if I told you that the greatest addiction of our time isn't drugs, isn't money, and isn't even validation? It is comfort. We crave it, chase it, protect it, worship it. We build our lives around avoiding friction. But here's the truth. Most people can't face. The more comfortable you become, the weaker you get. The easier your life is, the softer your mind becomes. The world has convinced you that peace is found in ease, when in reality, peace is forged through control. Not control of others, not control of circumstances, but control of yourself. This is what the Stoics lived and died for. This is what made them unshakable in chaos, calm in suffering, powerful in silence. Don't seek comfort. Seek control. That is the Stoic way. Think about how most people live today. They wake up and instantly reach for their phones. They scroll through other people's lives before they've even lived their own day. They chase dopamine hits, likes, views, food, gossip, all to avoid sitting in silence with themselves. The Stoics would call that slavery, because you can't claim freedom when your impulses own you. You can't claim strength when comfort dictates every decision. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." But mastery doesn't come from pleasure. It comes from restraint, from discipline, from standing in the fire and not flinching. The problem with comfort is that it tricks you. It whispers, "You deserve this. You've done enough. Rest, relax, take it easy." And while there is a place for rest, there is a difference between restoration and rot. Comfort promises peace but delivers numbness. It keeps you from growth by convincing you that you are fine where you are. You tell yourself, "I'll start tomorrow. I'll face it when I am ready." But tomorrow never comes and readiness never arrives. The Stoic doesn't wait for the right time. The Stoic acts not because it is easy, but because it is right. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled the most powerful empire on earth, didn't wake up in silk sheets saying, "Let me take it easy today." He woke up to chaos, wars, betrayal, sickness, pressure. Yet he wrote to himself, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, 'I am rising to do the work of a human being.'" That is not motivation, that is command. He didn't seek comfort. He sought control, control over his mind, control over his reactions, control over his purpose. And that is the Stoic difference. Comfort looks outward, control looks inward. Ask yourself this: who really owns your day? Is it you or your habits, your emotions, your distractions? When anyone insults you, do you control your reaction? Or do you let anger puppeteer your words? When life hits you with loss, do you crumble, or do you stand your ground? The Stoic way isn't to remove emotion, it is to master it. Comfort tells you to escape pain. Control teaches you to endure it with purpose. Because the man who can endure anything becomes unstoppable. The Stoics lived by one brutal truth: the universe doesn't owe you comfort. It owes you nothing. You can beg for an easy life, but life won't listen. It was never designed to be easy. The goal isn't to escape difficulty. The goal is to rise above it. That is where control begins. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Think about that. How much of your time slips away chasing comfort? How many hours die in the scroll, the snack, the sleep, in the distraction? We talk about wanting control, but control without awareness is just illusion. The Stoics practiced something radical: voluntary discomfort. They didn't just talk about strength, they trained it. They fasted when food was available. They walked in the cold without complaint. They prepared their minds for loss. Not to be pessimistic, but to be ready. They knew that where comfort disappears, only the trained remain calm. That is the law of life. Storms don't make you weak. They reveal whether you've been training or hiding. If you want control, you must step into the discomfort on purpose. Every single day, the Stoic doesn't wait for chaos. He creates small battles to stay sharp. He faces the cold shower, the early morning, the silence, the rejection. Not because he likes pain, but because he refuses to be ruled by ease. Control begins where comfort ends. You will never know what you are capable of until you go beyond what is comfortable. Comfort can keep you average, safe, and quiet, but control will make you powerful, deliberate, and free. The Stoics never knew the comfort in life that we do today, yet they lived more peaceful lives than most people currently do. Why? Because their peace did not depend on the environment. It was built on discipline. When everyone else was chasing pleasure, they were building presence. When everyone else was reacting, they were responding. They turned inward and ruled their emotions, their habits, their focus. That is the kind of peace you can't lose. The kind that comes from command, not convenience. You want to feel confident. Stop chasing comfort. You want peace. Stop seeking escape. You want to be free. Stop avoiding responsibility. The Stoic knows that freedom isn't given. It is earned. It is earned through choices, through effort, through control. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, sickness, war, and still wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That is the Stoic code. You don't wait for life to be easy. You use difficulty as the forge of your mind. Control doesn't come from calm seas. It is born in the storm. Let me ask you, when was the last time you chose discomfort on purpose? When did it last happen that you did something hard? Not for a reward, but to strengthen your will. The Stoics trained for hardship because they knew that without resistance, control fades. Just as muscles waste without exercise, your discipline decays without challenge. You can't meditate your way into strength if you never step into struggle. You can't build resilience from ease. You can't claim self-mastery if every obstacle sends you running back to comfort. The Stoic life is simple. Do what you don't want to do when it must be done. No excuses, no delay, no pity. Music swells slightly. Deep, steady drum beats return, echoing like a heart under armor. Most people mistake happiness for comfort, but the happiness of comfort dies fast. True fulfillment comes from knowing you can face anything and not lose yourself. Control gives that to you. You may lose money, status, and people, but if you have self-control, you are still rich. You may face pain, but if you have control, it won't define you. You may fall, but if you have control, you will rise again. The Stoic doesn't chase a life without pain. He seeks the strength to face it with grace. He doesn't wish for easier days. He builds the power to endure hard ones. That is control. That is freedom. That is the Stoic way. Control isn't in the big, cinematic moments. It is forged in the small, invisible decisions that mold who you become when no one is watching. The Stoics understood this deeply, that the mind, left untrained, becomes the greatest enemy, that the man who cannot govern his impulses will always serve them. The world tells you that freedom means doing whatever you want. Stoicism tells you that freedom means mastering what you want. Because if you can't control your desires, your emotions, your habits, then someone or something else already controls you. How many of your daily actions are actually yours? You go to your phone before you even think. You react before you reflect. Complain before you try. It is as if most people get trapped in their automatic behaviors, slaves to patterns they never chose. And yet, they talk about wanting peace, power, success. The Stoic laughs at that idea. Peace and power aren't gifts. They're earned with awareness. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." It sounds so trite, even simplistic. And yet, that one sentence contains the entire Stoic system. You can't control outcomes, only your actions. You can't control people, only your responses. You can't control life. Only the moment you understand that, truly understand it, everything changes. You stop being a victim. You stop being reactive. You start becoming deliberate. Control begins with observation. You can't master what you don't notice. The Stoics practiced something called prosoche, constant mindfulness. Awareness of every thought, every emotion, every reaction. When anger rose, they didn't fight it blindly, they examined it. When fear crept in, they didn't run from it, they questioned it. Why am I afraid? What belief is behind this? That is where control begins, not in suppression, but in awareness. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." But bravery isn't the absence of fear. It is the control of it. The Stoics didn't avoid fear. They used it as a compass. They trained themselves to walk toward discomfort, not away from it, because they knew that on the other side of fear lies mastery. The modern mind avoids discomfort at all costs. We sedate ourselves with entertainment, drown in distractions, and call it peace. But comfort without control is just slow decay. It numbs the body and poisons the spirit. You say you want strength, and then you stop escaping your weakness. You say you want control, yet you continue to feed your chaos. Control doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in the places that demand your full presence. When you fast, when you say no to temptation, when you hold silence instead of reacting. That is where control begins to take root. It isn't glamorous, it isn't loud, it is discipline, repeated quietly until it becomes who you are. The Stoics trained their minds the way warriors train their bodies. Epictetus, once a slave, knew this better than most. No man is free who is not master of himself, he said. He didn't have freedom of circumstance, but he did have freedom of thought. And that is a kind of power nobody can ever take from you. They could chain his body, but not his will. They could silence his words, but they couldn't stop his reason. Because that control was internal, not external. You don't need to control the world to be powerful. You just need to control your reaction to it. The sound of a distant storm starts softly in the background, wind, thunder, and the hum of rain. The narrator's voice becomes firmer, sharper, more direct to the core. What happens within you when someone disrespects you? Do you lose your center, give away your peace, and let their words dominate your mind? That is not strength. That is submission. You just gave away your control to someone who doesn't even deserve your energy. The Stoic doesn't do that. He feels the sting but doesn't become it. He acknowledges the emotion, then lets go of it. That is real power. Emotional detachment rooted in discipline, not indifference. Marcus Aurelius told himself every day, if you are pained by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. In other words, it is not the event that hurts you, but rather the meaning you give it. Control that meaning, and the world cannot control you. Every time you choose restraint over reaction, you train your mind. Every time you hold your tongue when anger burns, you sharpen your discipline. Every time you act with reason instead of impulse, you move closer to mastery. Control isn't a one-time decision, it is a daily practice. Modern society tells you to express everything, from your feelings and opinions to your pain. The Stoic doesn't suppress emotion, he channels it. He feels fully but acts wisely. For unfiltered emotion is chaos. Controlled emotion is power. When you learn to discipline your heart without closing it, that is when you evolve from ordinary into extraordinary. You see, the Stoic life isn't about being cold. It is about being clear. It is about keeping your inner world so calm that no external chaos can shake it. Most people want comfort because it makes them feel safe. The Stoic seeks control because it makes him truly free. The music drops low again. Slow drums, steady rhythm, heartbeat strong. The next time you feel the pull of comfort, that temptation to take the easy way out, avoid the difficult conversation. Stay in bed instead of face the day. Remember this: comfort is the enemy of control. Every moment of resistance is a moment of training. When you choose discomfort intentionally, you build strength unconsciously. You can't have power and comfort together. One of them has to die for the other to live. The Stoic chooses power, so stop seeking the path of least resistance. It only leads to the same place, mediocrity. The Stoic path is narrow, steep, and unending. But with each step you take toward control, you move closer to freedom. The music swells softly up, like dawn through the fog. Control is a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it gets. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens in those moments when no one's watching. When you make the hard choice simply because it is right. Don't seek comfort. Seek control. Because the man who masters himself masters everything. The mind you refuse to discipline will one day destroy you. That is not philosophy. That is nature. The Stoics knew that chaos doesn't come from the outside world. It is born within. The untrained mind is wild, restless, addicted to comfort and noise. But the disciplined mind, the one forged through pain, silence, and restraint, becomes a weapon. That is where control lives. Not in the illusion of perfection, but in the daily act of mastering your reactions to an imperfect world. People think discipline is punishment. It isn't. Discipline is liberation. Comfort binds you to weakness. Discipline frees you from it. Because every time you make yourself do what must be done, even when you don't feel like it, you reclaim a piece of your power. The Stoics called this the practice of arete fey, or excellence in all things. Not the pursuit of ease, but the pursuit of mastery. As Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." That is what discipline is. Friction. The resistance between who you are and who you could become. It is uncomfortable. It is slow. It is endless. But it is also sacred, because every moment of resistance is a test, and the Stoic faces those tests willingly. The Stoics didn't run from pain. They studied it, dissected it, turned it into wisdom. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal by friends, sickness in his body, death in his family. And yet he wrote, "Endure and persist." Why? Because he knew the secret most people forget. That suffering is not the enemy. Indiscipline is. Pain doesn't destroy you. Your avoidance of it does. The Stoic way is brutal in its honesty. If you can't handle discomfort, then you can't control yourself. And if you can't control yourself, you aren't free. Every time you take the easy way, every time you procrastinate the necessary, every time you yield to impulse, you give away another piece of your liberty. You become a puppet on the strings of emotion. But the man of discipline, the Stoic, does just the opposite. He stands firm even when his mind screams for escape. He hears the noise but doesn't obey it. That is control. As Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Think about that. Freedom isn't found in doing whatever you want. It is found in not being ruled by what you want. It is the power to say no when your instincts beg for yes. The power to keep going when everything in you wants to quit. That is what the Stoics were practicing, not perfection, but persistence. They would train themselves daily, small, consistent acts of defiance against comfort, getting up early when their bodies screamed for rest, speaking calmly when anger tried to dominate them, not yielding dignity to insult, practicing silence when ego wanted recognition. That is discipline. It is not loud. It is not glamorous. Neither is it easy. It is all that matters, though. Modern people confuse motivation with mastery. Motivation fades, discipline remains. Motivation depends on emotion. Discipline is the rejection of emotion's rule. The Stoic doesn't wait to feel inspired. He acts precisely because it is difficult. Because difficulty is the path. Let me ask you, when was the last time you did something hard on purpose? Not for recognition, not for reward, but simply to strengthen your will. When was the last time you said, "I will do this because I said I would"? That is where power begins. Most people talk about freedom as if it is external. Money, status, independence. But the Stoic knows it is internal. Freedom is saying no to your lower self. Freedom is training your body and mind to obey your higher nature. You can lose everything: wealth, reputation, love. But if you have discipline, you will rise again. For the disciplined man cannot be broken, only sharpened. Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body, said Seneca. Every obstacle is training. Every failure and rejection and pain are all training. The Stoic doesn't say, "Why me?" he says, "What is this teaching me?" That is control. That is how the pain becomes purpose. Music softens, wind and faint rain return. The narrator's voice becomes almost whisper. Like now, reflective but intense. You want control. Learn to love difficulty. Learn to crave the hard path, because the man who only acts when it is easy will never grow beyond mediocrity. You must choose the path that sharpens you every day. Not just when it is convenient. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." That's the Stoic code. Stop thinking, start doing, stop waiting for motivation, start ordering your mind. Discipline is not emotionless, it is directed emotion. It is the transference of energy into action. You can't have control without resistance. You can't have freedom without structure. You can't have mastery without discipline. The Stoic life is built on this paradox, that the more rules you place upon yourself, the freer you become. Every limitation that you accept in the name of growth expands your strength, and every comfort you refuse refines your character. And that is the ultimate control. To rule yourself so completely that nothing external can enslave you. Discipline isn't about being hard for the sake of hardness. It is about aligning your actions with your values every single day, no matter how you feel. You train the body to obey the mind and the mind to obey reason. That is not suppression. That is sovereignty. Music swells higher, lightning cracks faintly in the distance. You see, the Stoic doesn't ask life to be easier. He asks himself to be stronger. He doesn't wish for less struggle. He prays for more control. Because control is the only thing that lasts when the storm hits. And make no mistake, the storm always comes. Comfort will make you soft. Discipline will make you steel. The Stoics believe that life isn't supposed to be comfortable. It is supposed to be conquered. And that doesn't mean conquering the world outside of you. That means conquering yourself. Pain isn't an obstacle in the Stoic path, but rather the path itself. Because only through discomfort do you see what you are truly made of. Only through loss do you learn detachment. Only through struggle do you find strength. That is why they didn't fear suffering. They welcomed it. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way."